Hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive. You are in for a seriously wild ride today because we are not just um, stepping into a story.
No, we're stepping into a massive piece of science fiction history.
Exactly. We are cracking open a book that for a really long time was kind of seen as the holy grail of answers for one of the biggest mysteries in pop culture.
Right, the oldest question in the universe.
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who.
And to do that, we are diving into the source material today, which is Lungbarrow by Marc Platt. And I have to say right up front, it is really hard to overstate just how heavy this material is.
Oh, completely. And I don't just mean the physical weight of the text, though it is incredibly dense. I mean the narrative burden it carries.
Yeah.
This was intended to be a final stop.
Right, because this isn't just a random adventure. This was the end of an era. Our sources today, the novel's text, the author's preface, the lore summaries, they all point to this being the conclusion of the Virgin New Adventures.
Which, for those who might not know, was the series that kept the whole universe alive in the 90s when it wasn't on television.
Yeah, they were carrying the torch. And the mission of this specific book was to finally, after decades of waiting, actually answer that core question about the Doctor's origins.
Which is, a really dangerous thing to do.
Whoa, incredibly dangerous.
When a character's name is literally a question, answering it risks destroying the magic. But the author, Marc Platt, his answer isn't simple at all. It is, well, it's complicated.
Complicated is putting it mildly. It is wonderfully, terrifyingly complicated. I mean, if you thought the Doctor was just this eccentric traveler who stole a box because he was bored, you need to prepare yourself.
Yeah, throw that out the window.
We're about to untack a family reunion from hell, a house that is essentially alive, and some biological concepts that will just completely rewire how you understand Time Lords.
Because Platt actually mentions in the preface that his goal was to peel away all the layers. He wanted to commit what he called the cardinal sin of answering the big questions.
But then he immediately subverts it, right?
Exactly. He knocks those explanations completely sideways with a whole new barrel load of questions. He doesn't give you a clean biography. He gives you gothic horror.
I love that framing so much. It's like you spend 30 years trying to pick the lock on a tiny mystery box, and when you finally open it, there's just a much bigger, much scarier box inside.
A very dark box.
Yeah. Because looking through this material, this does not feel like a fun sci-fi romp. This feels like Gorman-Gast in space. We are talking about a 673-year-long wake.
Moving furniture.
Furniture that literally moves on its own, yes. And a society where the very concept of a mother is treated like a filthy word.
It is deeply unsettling. The setting for all of this is the House of Lungbarrow, it's a place of ancient decay. It's an entire family trapped in this horrific waiting game that has gone on for nearly 7 centuries.
673 years, to be precise. That is really, really long time to wait for someone to come home for dinner.
Especially when the dinner is rotting on the table.
Right.
Or when the people waiting have basically forgotten what it even means to be hungry.
So we have the text, we have Platt's preface, we have the previously on summaries, and we have these terrifying nightmares experienced by the companions.
Yes.
We are going to explore the Doctor's family. And yes, he does actually have one. We'll look at the mysterious house itself and the incredibly dark secrets of Gallifreyan biology. And honestly, biology is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
It is a very loose term in this context. It completely defies human understanding. What we are looking at is fundamentally alien.
Let's jump right in then. Let's set the stage for you. We are on Gallifrey, but I need you to forget the shiny, sterile citadel with the bright lights and the Time Lords standing around in big collars, nodding politely.
Yeah, this is not that.
This is something way older, something much darker. And the very first thing we need to get our heads around, the thing that honestly just stopped me in my tracks when reading this, is where Time Lords actually come from.
You're talking about the birds and the bees. Or, well, the absolute lack of them.
Exactly. The source material is completely explicit about this.
Yeah.
Gallifreyans do not have parents.
No.
They don't have mothers. They don't have fathers. Biology, procreation, as we as humans understand it, is just entirely gone.
It's wiped out. And this is so central to understanding the society Platt is building here. In the text, we get this flashback, or maybe it's a memory, it's a bit hazy, but it's a classroom scene.
Oh, this scene is so creepy.
It really is. There is a young pupil who is heavily implied to be the Doctor as a child and his tutor, but the tutor isn't a person.
Right.
It is a robotic badger.
Okay, we have to pause on that image.
Yeah.
A robotic badger.
A furry avatroid, the text calls it, with huge horns. So it's effectively a robotic badger with horns teaching history.
That is just such an absurd, terrifying mix of cute and incredibly clinical.
And the pupil in this scene, he's bored, he's a bit rebellious, but he asks a question that completely breaks this machine's programming. He asks, what were mothers?
What were mothers? Past tense. That specific phrasing really sticks with you.
It does, because it implies a whole history that has simply been deleted. The robotic tutor gets really uncomfortable. It tries to aggressively steer the lesson back to the standard curriculum.
Which is the triumphs of Rassilon, right?
Exactly. State-sanctioned history. But the child persists. He brings up finding a nest of taffel shrews in the pantry.
Taffel shrews, which are like little alien rodents, right?
Basically. And he knows these animals give birth naturally. So he connects the dots and asks the badger if children used to grow inside their mothers, just like the shrews do.
And the reaction to that question is wild. It's treated like he's swearing in church.
It is a massive taboo. The text uses the word dirt and biology. The tutor is disgusted. And the reason for this goes deep into the lore. The backstory provided here is that Gallifrey is completely barren. No children are born naturally anymore.
Because of the curse.
Right, the Pythias curse.
Okay, let's unpack that for a second. The Pythias curse. It sounds like something straight out of ancient Greek mythology.
Well, it functions like a myth for them. Ancient Gallifrey used to be matriarchal. It was ruled by this figure known as the Pythia.
Okay.
But then Rassilon, who is the founding father of Time Lord Society, he overthrew her. He wanted to establish a cold scientific republic. And when the Pythia was defeated, she used her power to curse the entire planet with sterility.
Which is just an incredible act of vengeance. No more children can be born.
She ensured they would die out.
It sounds like game over for the species.
It absolutely would have been game over. But Rassilon was a scientist. He couldn't fix the biology, so he replaced biology with technology. He created the looms.
The looms. It sounds like they are, weaving rugs or textiles, not actual people. But that metaphor is very intentional by the author, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. It is genetic weaving. That pupil in the classroom scene, he has to recite his lessons for the badger. And he says, 1 loom, 45 cousins. Children are woven from genetic material. They are born fully formed, well, born as children, not infants, and they come straight out of this industrial machine. It is factory reproduction.
And there is this highly visceral description in the text of the doctor remembering his own birth. And let me tell you, it is not a warm, fuzzy memory. It sounds profoundly traumatic.
It is pure body horror. He remembers being strung out, unraveled inside the loom, just raw genetic material being pulled together.
Yeah.
And then suddenly his lungs just burst with freezing cold air. Yeah. And the very first thing he sees isn't a loving mother holding him.
It's the 44 other cousins.
Yes. 44 relatives staring down at him, pointing, laughing, and prodding him.
That is just straight up nightmare fuel. Yeah. Imagine popping into existence, taking your very first breath of cold air, and immediately being bullied by a crowd of 44 adults who just expect you to fall in line.
It really explains so much about the doctor's character when you frame it like that.
It really does.
That inherent loneliness he always has, that desperate desire to just run away from his own people. He was born into a crowd that mocked him. He wasn't born into a family that wanted him or loved him.
He was literally manufactured.
Manufactured to fill a quota. He was placed in a rigid hierarchy that immediately resented him for just existing.
And this system, this whole loom system, it creates such a weird dynamic for what they call a family. Because it's not a nuclear family at all. It's a bureaucracy.
It's strictly defined by the Honorable Central Population Directory. You are assigned a quota. The House of Lungbarrow is allowed exactly 45 cousins. No more, no less.
So you only get a new family member when an old one dies.
Right. They're called replacements.
Which means you are literally just waiting around for someone in your house to die so a new person can exist. That creates an entire society built entirely on death watching.
Precisely. And that brings us perfectly to the setting itself, the House of Lungbarrow. Because in this book, the house isn't just a place they live. The house determines the family.
Let's talk about the house, because the physical descriptions in the text are just wild. This is not a futuristic sci-fi condo.
No, not at all.
It sounds like a living, breathing nightmare.
The book describes it as being half attic, half forest path.
Which is such a weird image. White tree trunks actually growing through the house, right?
Yes. The architecture is deeply organic. It fuses ancient stone and living wood. It gives you this sense that the house is rooted into the planet of Gallifrey in a way that modern Time Lord buildings just aren't. and it is semi-sentient.
Right. The furniture moves.
Yes.
And when you say the furniture moves, do you mean like magically?
Yeah.
Or is it some kind of hidden technology?
It's described more like it's alive. It shuffles. Chairs will literally shuffle out of your way, or sometimes they will deliberately get in your way. There's this one scene where a wooden table gets startled by someone sneezing, and it scuttles away into the shadows.
That is so creepy. It implies that literally every single object around you is watching you. It's like living inside the stomach of a beast.
And the immune system of that beast would be the drudges.
The drudges, right. These are the servants of the house.
Servants is a polite word. They are described as massive, wooden, robotic creatures with these shiny, varnished faces. They just stalk the corridors.
They sound like terrifying mannequins.
Very much so. They don't speak much at all, but they are there to impose order. They enforce the will of the house on the family.
It really feels like a classic haunted house story, but the ghosts are biological technology. You have these silent wooden sentinels, furniture that watches your every move, and absolutely everything is just covered in a thick layer of dust.
Dust and candle dark. That is the exact state the house has been trapped in.
Candle dark. I have to say that is a beautiful word. It sounds almost romantic until you realize the context, which is just incredibly depressing.
It implies this permanent twilight existence, complete stasis. The house has effectively been in deep mourning for centuries. The shutters are securely closed. The lighting is permanently dim. It is a house holding its breath.
And there is a mystery surrounding the house's actual physical location in the present day, too.
Right. When Leela is investigating the doctor's roots, which we will get into later, she discovers that the house is missing.
K9, her robot dog, searches the Gallifreyan data networks and finds that the House of Lungbarrow has been deliberately erased from the official records. It has inexplicably gone missing from the southern mountains.
It has become a non-place, a true ghost house.
And inside this ghost house, this non-place, the family is just trapped. We mentioned the time frame earlier, 673 years.
That is the specific agonizing number.
Yeah.
673 years ago, the doctor left. He stole a TARDIS and he ran away from it all. And for 673 years, the clocks inside the house have been stopped.
And the food has been rotting. Or at least the ghost food has.
There's a very specific scene where the doctor's companion, Chris Cwej, is exploring the house and he sees this massive banquet table and he realizes that the food on it is just wrong.
It's an endless loop of misery. They're all sitting around waiting for the death day of their patriarch, Quences, and they physically and temporally cannot move on until the doctor comes back.
So let's meet the people trapped in this loop. Because if you thought your own family gatherings were tense, the House of Lungbarrow puts them entirely to shame.
Oh, absolutely. It is a cast of eccentrics, and that is putting it very mildly. It is basically a collection of sociopaths and victims all trapped in a dusty box. Let's start with the head honcho, Ordinal General Quences.
The Kithriarch, that's his official title, the head of the family. He is ancient. The source text mentions he is somewhere around 7,000 years old.
7,000 years?
Yes. And he was the one who personally mentored the doctor. He shaped his early life. But he's also an absolute tyrant.
Right. And in the present day of the story, he is lying in a glass coffin.
He is. But the horror is that he isn't dead. He is inside a static field generator. He has literally paused his own death.
That is pure concentrated spite. Just saying, I absolutely refuse to die until every single person is in this room to hear my final will.
It is the ultimate form of control. Quences formally disinherited the doctor centuries ago, yet he stubbornly refuses to let anyone else inherit the title until the doctor returns to face him. He is preserving his own dying body, with fresh flowers resting on his chest, just waiting.
It is a level of passive aggressiveness that is truly staggering.
Yeah.
Just forcing your entire family to pause their lives for 7 centuries.
And waiting right there in the wings is the primary villain of the piece, Cousin Glospin. If Quences is the tyrant of the family, Glospin is the snake.
Glospin is such a fascinating antagonist. Let's talk about him.
He has this defining physical feature, a severe burn scar on his arm, which becomes a key identifying mark later in the murder mystery aspect of the plot. But his personality is just toxic. He is ambitious, deeply cruel, and completely obsessed with genetics.
His official title is a cellular eugenicist, right?
Yes, which tells you everything you need to know. He is obsessed with the genetic purity of the loom, and he absolutely hates the doctor. He refers to him constantly as Wormhole.
Wormhole. I mean, as far as Time Lord insults go, that is incredibly solid.
It cuts deep. It implies a defect, a structural leakage in the timeline. Glospin genuinely believes the doctor has anomalies in his genetic coding. He thinks the doctor is a literal mistake of the loom. And Glospin desperately wants the title of Kithriarch for himself. He wants to rule the house.
But when we first meet Glospin, in the present day of the narrative, it is such a great, darkly comedic scene. He isn't wandering the dusty halls, plotting his grand ascension.
No, he is trapped.
He is trapped inside a stove. I honestly cannot get over this specific detail.
A rotund cast iron stove with a chimney pipe. Chris, the companion, is walking through the kitchen and hears this muffled voice calling for help from inside the appliance. It turns out Glospin was locked in there as a punishment by the housekeeper.
That perfectly illustrates the level of deep dysfunction we are dealing with here. You were bad, Cousin Glospin? Go sit in the stove for a few decades.
And the best part is when the doctor finally arrives and lets him out. He opens the stove using an Osirian bottle opener.
Just so casual about it.
Extremely casual, but it brilliantly highlights how petty and small these supposedly powerful Time Lords really are. They're basically squabbling, vindictive children who just happen to have godlike technology lying around.
Speaking of the housekeeper who locked him in there, we have Sathralope.
Yes. She rules the domestic side of the house from a rocking chair. She is incredibly intense, always angry. She officially forbids the doctor's name from ever being spoken aloud in the halls.
She seems like she is the one actively keeping the house in that state of candledark.
She is holding the entire aesthetic of grief together with sheer, unyielding rage. She is the jailer of the house just as much as Quences is.
And in stark contrast to her, you have Cousin Innocent.
Innocent is the truly tragic figure in all of this. She acts as the peacemaker. The text describes her constantly darning socks, trying to keep the family records updated using fading ink.
Just desperately trying to maintain some semblance of sanity while everyone else around her goes completely mad.
Exactly, and she takes it upon herself to protect Ois.
Ois. The replacement.
Ois is such a crucial concept. Because the doctor was officially disinherited and presumed gone forever, the Loom automatically produced Ois to fill that mandatory quota of 45 Tezens.
So he is effectively the doctor's replacement brother. Or clone.
Cousin is the Gallifreyan term, but genetically and structurally, yes, he fills the exact slot the doctor left empty. But he is a complete mess. He is described as incredibly clumsy and gluttonous.
He eats Tefl shrews raw, doesn't he?
He does. And gruel. He is a massive disappointment to the rigid standards of the family. Glospin bullies him relentlessly. He is treated entirely like the village idiot, but Innocent tries to shield him.
But the tragedy is that he is only that way because the family dynamic made him that way.
That is the core theme. He is a dark mirror. He represents exactly what the doctor could have easily become if he hadn't had the willpower to steal a TARDIS and run away. A sad, bullied creature just hiding in the pantry eating rodents.
Wow, that is grim. And we can't forget the last key family member, RQ, the little guy.
RQ is the traumatized witness to the history of the house. He saw something absolutely terrible happen 673 years ago on the death day. And ever since, he has been utterly terrified of the dark.
He just clings to the past.
He does. And he is the one who eventually manages to reveal to Chris what actually happened on that night.
Right. So we have this absolute pressure cooker of a toxic family. And into this bizarre mix, Marc Platt throws the doctor's companions. And I have to say, Lungbarrow does not let the companions off easy.
Not at all. The narrative aggressively splits them up, and each one experiences a completely different facet of the story's horror. You have to remember, this is the era of the Seventh Doctor in the novels.
The master manipulator.
Exactly. He's dark, he keeps massive secrets from his friends, and his companions very often end up paying a heavy psychological price for traveling with him.
Let's talk about Chris Cwej first. He is one of the newer companions created specifically for the books. He's a policeman from the future, a big, tough guy. But he is having a seriously rough time in this story.
He is basically having a prolonged mental breakdown. He's plagued by these horrific nightmares. He dreams of a woman wrapped in brown gauze resembling a burial shroud.
That's incredibly ominous.
And he dreams of a vulture woman who is physically tearing out his heart.
That sounds lovely. Just a great night's sleep in the time vortex.
And throughout all this, he keeps hearing a very specific nursery rhyme in his head. "Eighth man bound, make no sound."
That rhyme. It appears in the source text multiple times. It feels less like a song and more like a dark prophecy.
It absolutely is a prophecy. And when Chris finally ends up wandering the halls of the House of Lungbarrow, he experiences it almost like a ghost. He is viewing events from the past playing out around him. At first, his futuristic policeman brain tries to rationalize it. He thinks it is a holovid, some kind of advanced simulation.
Which is such a deeply human reaction to trauma. Oh, my brain can't process this magic haunted house, so it must just be a really good hologram.
Exactly. But he is actually seeing the original Death Day party from 673 years ago. He is watching the exact moment everything went completely wrong. He sees the family brutally arguing. He sees Quences stubbornly refusing to die.
And that's when he realizes the truth about RQ.
Yes. He realizes that the little man crying in the corner of this ancient memory is RQ. Chris is acting as our window, witnessing the exact origin point of the curse that froze the house.
Meanwhile, completely separated from this, we have Ace, Dorothy McShane, and she is having a very different but equally surreal and terrifying experience. She isn't even on the planet Gallifrey, is she?
No, she is on Earth. Specifically, she is in Paris. But it's 19th century Paris, and she's shopping at Marks and Spencer.
Marks and Spencer in 19th century Paris. That is a very, very specific vibe the author's going for.
Well, Ace has a time-traveling motorbike in this era of the novels. She hops around time for fun. It's a big part of her charm as a character. But the scene shifts from whimsical sci-fi shopping to deadly thriller very fast.
Because she realizes she's being stalked.
Yes, but not by a monster or an alien. She looks into a reflection and realizes she is being stalked by herself.
This scene is genuinely mind-bending to read. She physically confronts a girl who looks exactly like her, acts exactly like her, but something is just fundamentally wrong.
It is a doppelganger. And this other version of Ace claims to be Time's vigilante. And then, without hesitation, she shoots the real Ace.
She shoots her, just right there in Paris.
Point blank, with a high-impulse carbine weapon.
That is insane. And then what happens?
The narrative cuts, and they both wake up inside a completely white, featureless room. And they don't fight, they just sit down and talk.
They compare scars, right?
They compare their battle scars, they compare their memories of fighting Daleks with the Doctor, they drink brandy together. It is highly surreal. But it heavily implies a severe fracture in Ace's identity or her timeline.
Because of the Doctor.
Yes. It connects directly back to the chaos and the anomalies surrounding the Doctor's own origins. His personal timeline is so incredibly messy and unresolved that it is actively starting to splinter his friends' timelines. Ace is literally forced to confront a hardened version of herself from a different potential temporal path.
That is so deep. It's like the Doctor's emotional and temporal baggage is becoming literal physical baggage for his companions to fight. It really shows the extreme cost of traveling with him in this era.
Exactly. The collateral damage is immense. And then we have the third companion thread, Leela.
Leela, the 17 warrior, the savage who chose to stay behind on Gallifrey, one of the absolute classic television companions.
But she is Lady Leela now. She is married to Castellan Andred, who is the head of the Capitol Guard. She is desperately trying to be civilized. She wears the heavy Time Lord robes. She attends the boring political functions.
Which she is completely bored out of her mind.
Completely. You can take the warrior out of the jungle, but she needs a hunt. So she decides to investigate the Doctor's hidden roots, and this is where the book turns into a full-on political conspiracy thriller.
Because she finds out the House of Lungbarrow has been systematically erased.
And almost immediately after K9 pulls that data, the doors get kicked in.
The CIA arrives, the Celestial Intervention Agency, the spooky, off-the-books secret police of Gallifrey.
Yes. Leela gets violently arrested by an almoner named Cwej and this incredibly creepy serpent-like Time Lord. And during the scuffle, K9, poor K9, gets shot.
No, not the dog. That is rule number 1 of establishing villainy. You do not shoot the robot dog.
He gets blasted by Captain Jomdek. It instantly creates this paranoid sense that there is a massive high-level conspiracy within the Time Lord government to keep the Doctor's true origins a buried secret. The president, Romana, is conveniently away. Leela is on her own.
But she doesn't back down.
Never. She has this fantastic line where she looks right at the CIA agent interrogating her and says, "I will fight you for my memories."
She is just so fierce. I absolutely love that they kept her core character intact. So we have all these disparate threads pulling tighter and tighter toward the house. The companions are scattered across time, trapped in white rooms, or arrested by the secret police. And finally, the Doctor returns to Lungbarrow.
The prodigal son returns, or, in Gallifreyan terms, the prodigal cousin.
And when he finally arrives with Chris, the atmospheric description in the book is just incredibly heavy. The TARDIS materializes, but has fallen straight through the floorboards of the house.
It fell through the rotten timber and is left hanging suspended in a giant web.
A giant web. just inside the hallway.
Inside the Great Hall, which is described as being as vast as a canyon, and the TARDIS is just hanging there in the darkness like a caught fly. It is such a brilliant visual representation of the trap he has walked into. The Doctor has walked right back into the sticky, inescapable web of his own family trauma.
And the Doctor's behavior during this return, because usually he swaggers into a room and takes control, right?
Not here. He is highly evasive. He walks in and just starts whistling nervously into the dark. He actively denies knowing where they are to Chris, and then finally quietly admits that it is his home.
Wow.
It is classic Seventh Doctor behavior, the denial, the manipulation of the truth. But here, the underlying emotion isn't cunning. It feels like pure fear. He is returning to a place of immense psychological trauma. Stripped of his authority, he is basically a scared child again.
And when Glospin finally sees him after the Doctor lets him out of the punishment stove, the insults just immediately start flying.
Glospin is dusting the soot off his clothes, desperately trying to regain his dignity, and he immediately tries to assert dominance. He drops the wormhole insult.
And he mocks the Doctor for being late, 673 years late.
But then comes the big narrative revelation. The reason why everyone has been waiting in the Candledark. Glospin reveals that the Doctor is the specific person Quences is waiting for.
The will cannot be legally read without his presence.
Exactly. He is the physical key to the release of the entire family. The family has been trapped in amber for centuries, purely because the dying patriarch refuses to let them go until the Doctor submits to his authority one final time.
So they head to the Great Hall to face the music. They find the bier where Quences is resting. And this is where the gothic horror of the setting truly peaks. You have this ancient man in a glass coffin, perfectly preserved.
And the Doctor finally realizes the horrible truth of it. Quences isn't dead. He has been consciously holding on, suspended in that stasis field for centuries, just to force the Doctor to listen to him.
Yeah, it is some serious next-level dedication to making sure you get the last word in an argument.
It really is. And the Doctor, facing this monument to his family's stubborn stagnation, he just snaps. The source text describes him rushing over and physically tearing down the heavy planks that have been blocking the massive window for centuries.
He wants light. He wants fresh air. He just wants to violently break the spell the house is under.
He wants to break the stasis. He tears down the boards with his bare hands. Ancient dust flies everywhere. The cousins are shrieking in terror at the disruption. But then, the text explicitly says that a darkness rises up from the windows instead of light.
Oh, that is incredibly ominous.
Very. It signifies that by forcibly opening up the house, he isn't just letting in sunlight. He is unleashing a much older truth that has been festering down in the dark. He is breaking the historical seal on the figure known as the other.
Right. So we have covered the immediate plot, the horrific family dynamics, the creepy setting. But Lungbarrow is famous, or perhaps infamous, depending on who you ask, for its deep lore, for what it fundamentally says about the nature and the origins of the Time Lords themselves.
Yes, this is where we step back and look at the big picture. The deep mythology that Marc Platt was trying to inject into the franchise.
And it all starts right there in the book's prologue,
Right.
which mentions something called the Hand of Omega.
Right. The prologue gives us this vignette of a solitary figure standing in the ancient past, watching the city on Gallifrey burn during a revolution. And this figure has a box with him, a flying coffin, it's called. And that is the Hand of Omega.
And the text says this incredibly powerful stellar manipulator follows him around like a dog.
Yes, like a loyal pet. It pines for its creator. Now, Omega created it, but this figure is heavily implied to be the mysterious third founder of Time Lord society, the one simply known as the Other.
Alongside Rassilon and Omega.
Exactly, the forgotten architects.
And the implication of this solitary figure in the prologue is what exactly?
The Other vanished from historical records. Legend says he threw himself into the genetic looms. He willingly disintegrated his entire genetic structure into the machine in order to escape Rassilon's growing dictatorship. The implication, which is heavily woven through every chapter of the text, is that the Doctor is deeply intrinsically connected to this Other.
That he isn't just a random Time Lord who got bored.
No. He has a direct genetic line to the very beginning of their society.
Which connects perfectly back to the whole loom concept we discussed earlier. If the Doctor was woven by a machine, but he possesses these specific anomalies that Glospin keeps shouting about,
then it strongly suggests he might have been woven directly from the recycled genetic material of the Other. That the Doctor is, in some convoluted biological way, a reincarnation or a reconstruction of the one founding father who rejected this sterile, loveless society.
which completely explains why he felt the absolute need to run away.
Precisely. The text constantly contrasts the Doctor with his relatives. The Doctor is chaotic, he is vibrant, he is fighting for the universe as Time's champion. Meanwhile, his family is stagnant, obsessed with petty bureaucracy, and literally rotting away inside a house that technically doesn't even exist anymore.
He didn't just run away because he wanted to see the stars.
No, he ran away because his very soul, his foundational genetic code, is fundamentally opposed to the unnatural stagnation of Gallifrey. He is the ancient rebel, reborn into a society that forgot how to live.
It's amazing because the Time Lords in Lungbarrow, they aren't portrayed as these wise, godlike observers of the universe like they are in some of the classic stories. They are incredibly petty.
They are terrified of change. They replaced the messiness of biology with the cold efficiency of the loom, and they replaced passion with endless ritual. The Doctor represents absolutely everything they tried to repress.
It genuinely recontextualizes the entire television show. It explains exactly why the Doctor has the Hand of Omega safely hidden away in the TV episode, Remembrance of the Daleks. It explains why he carries so many dark secrets. He is walking around with a fragmented genetic memory of a founder.
And he is dragging around the trauma of a house that simply wouldn't let him go.
So bringing this massive, dense narrative all back to you, the listener, why does this specific book matter so much? Why is Lungbarrow such a pivotal, necessary deep dive for anyone interested in the lore?
Because it grounds a character who is usually basically a god. We have spent decades watching the Doctor travel around saving the universe, but Lungbarrow forces us to look at what he was saving himself from in the first place. It shows us that even an immortal being who travels all of time and space has roots.
And those roots are deeply, deeply twisted.
Very twisted.
It is the ultimate you can't go home again story. Or, I guess more accurately, you shouldn't go home again because your cruel cousin will literally lock you inside a kitchen stove.
And because your very existence is a direct challenge to the corrupt foundations of your own society. It humanizes the alien Doctor by making him even more alien to his own people. It tells us that you can run to the absolute edge of the universe, but eventually the past catches up. You have to go home and deal with your family.
Even if your family happens to be a cult of eugenicist time wizards living in a rotting, sentient tree. We have journeyed all the way from the sterile, terrifying looms of ancient Gallifrey, where the word mother is considered a dirty word, into the dusty, living nightmare of Lungbarrow. We have met a family permanently frozen in their own resentment.
And we have seen a Doctor who was finally forced to confront the one thing he can never truly outrun, his own origin.
And through it all, we have seen that the great mystery of Doctor Who isn't just about a hidden name. It was about a conscious rejection of an imposed destiny.
It is a choice to be something more than what you were woven to be.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought, just a provocative little nugget to chew on after everything we've unpacked today.
Oh, go for it.
We talked a lot about the looms. We talked about Glospin angrily accusing the Doctor of being a genetic anomaly, a mistake in the weaving process.
Right, the wormhole insult.
But remember the lore we just discussed. The other threw himself into the genetic loom intentionally. He preserved his foundational genetic code on purpose. So, is the Doctor actually a mistake? Or is he a time bomb? Was he specifically designed thousands and thousands of years ago to be woven exactly when he was? Was he built from the ground up to be the chaotic, uncontrollable element that finally brings the entire stagnant house of Rassilon crashing down?
Oh, that is fascinating. And if you take it a step further, if the House of Lungbarrow is truly alive and sentient, did it know?
Did it know what?
Did it purposefully keep him away for 673 years to protect him from the Time Lords or to prepare him for his destiny? Does the House actually want him to burn it all down?
Now, that is a question absolutely worth pondering. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredibly dark, deep dive into the hidden heart of Gallifrey.
It has been an absolute pleasure unearthing this.
Until next time, keep asking the big questions, especially if the official answer involves 45 cousins and a robotic badger.
Goodbye.
See you in the vortex.